Welcome back to On Texas Football. I'm Jeff Howe, joined by CJ Vogel. This edition of On Texas Football brought to you by Allegiant Digital Marketing. We'll tell you more about Allegiant Digital here later in the show. Going to do an overview of the wide receiver position. Got a couple of big-time decisions coming up in July. But CJ, I wanted to take a big picture look at it, not just ahead of the decisions, because it's an intriguing group because you've got one guy going into the 2025 season who's draft eligible, and that's DeAndre Moore. And after that, it's a lot of young cats, a lot of guys that might have to wait a year for their opportunity. But CJ, this is a depth chart that unless Texas has some attrition, some unexpected attrition between now and the start of the 2026 season, this is a wide receiver group that I'm really excited to see how they grow with Arch Manning and what we expect to be his 2 years as a starter.
I totally agree. If you look at it, and I think you mentioned it there perfectly, there's a lot of youth, right? So there's a lot of potential. 2025 is going to be interesting to see how quickly they gel with Arch Manning. And in theory, they should, right? You know, these are guys a year ago that were working with the twos for the most part, right? Ryan Wingo, DeAndre Moore, they had time, obviously, with that first unit and Quinn Ewers. But for the most part, a lot of them were spent behind the scenes working with Arch Manning. You would expect the same for a Parker Livingstone this year as well. Aaron Butler, we'll see how he figures into the fold as well, but a lot of work already put in with Arch Manning. That chemistry should be there, but the health of that room stems from the youth, right? You talk about the 2025 class, the 4 wide receivers that they're deploying or set to deploy this fall. Look, that's a good, healthy group of guys that they're working to integrate into the offense as well. So a lot of youth, a lot of talent, a lot of potential. I'm with you. It feels healthy when compared to a lot of positions in that locker room at the moment.
The upside for me in 25 and beyond is the dynamic between and the relationship between Arch Manning and Ryan Wingo. Let's not forget that when you go back and look at the 2024 class, obviously you talk about the wide receiver position. It was a historic year nationally at the wide receiver position with a lot of 5-star guys, even guys outside of that range that could have been ranked as such by the recruiting industry. But you look at the top, and based on last year, you'd have to go into this season saying, okay, whether you want him 1, 2, 1A, 1B, it's Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State and Ryan Williams at Alabama. But CJ, given the fact that Arch and Ryan Wingo worked together running with the number 2s last year, so they've gotten a natural rapport on top of the fact that he's got the skills to emerge as the number 1 receiver in a Steve Sarkisian offense. Am I crazy to think we could get to the end of the regular season in 2025 and Ryan Wingo could be in the discussion for, let's say, the 4 or 5 best wide receivers in college football?
You know, I don't think it's crazy to say. Of course, Wingo was a 5-star level kid coming out of high school. He's working with Arch Manning. The thing, and my pause there is, where have we seen that statistical anomaly with the Sarkisian wide receiver at Texas? You had him at Alabama. We know Xavier Worthy put up big numbers, but they weren't, incredible numbers. Some, numbers that you look at and you just kind of gasp and in the sense that, whoa, I don't see these numbers often, right? Xavier Worthy, I think, only topped 1,000 yards once, and he only did it by a couple feet, essentially. So I believe in Ryan Wingo, don't get me wrong, but I think that there's a little bit of a pause for me in the sense that I don't know if that stat sheet will be filled like we see from other wide receivers across the country. Still, that talent's undeniable, and that chemistry, as we've talked about with Arch Manning, should give him a leg up going into the season and through the season as well.
Yeah, it'll have to be people that watch Texas and say, all right, he's Arch's number 1 target. He might not have the robust numbers we expect Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams and some others to put up, but from a talent standpoint, I agree with you 100%. Obviously, I think Ryan Wingo can be that guy. We look at Sark's Circle of Trust, something we talk about going into every season. Last year, I know Rod talked about it a lot, and I kind of thought it had a chance to go this way, the way it rolled out, where that thing was big to start out and then gradually closed down as the year went on. I think, CJ, this has a chance to be a one that starts small and gets bigger as the year goes on, because other than Ryan Wingo and DeAndre Moore, I don't know that anybody's in that circle of trust right now. Maybe Parker Livingstone is. Well, I'll get your thoughts on Emit Mosley here in a second, because I know you had some notes over at ontexasfootball.com late in the week, but I don't know, other than those 2 guys, that we can say with certainty that anybody else is in the circle of trust right now.
Yeah, I think eventually it will be 4, right? It's Wingo, it's more. Livingstone is in that group. And then I think Emit Mosley, obviously, with his production at Stanford his freshman year, he's going to find a way the minute that he gets completely up to speed with the playbook. That's your 4 right now. Could an Aaron Butler get in there? Again, we'll have to wait and see. I've heard that there's still a little bit more that needs to show up on the field to get him into that circle. Will a freshman make a move? Look, I think that's certainly a possibility. And that window for them to earn that trust kind of for me is open from weeks 2, 3, and 4, right? When Texas plays their non-conference ahead of going to Florida for the start of SEC football. That's going to be their window to earn the trust, to kind of get on the field and prove to Arch Manning, prove to the circle that they deserve that opportunity when SEC play comes rolling around. Because look, Texas is going to play some tougher opponents this year. I know it's the same schedule as a year ago, but it's better quarterbacks across the board. It's, in my opinion, better teams than what we saw on the field a year ago as well. If you don't show in that early window in the season that you're capable of understanding the playbook, being where you need to be, showing that effort that gets you, that Jordan Whittington, Xavier Worthy play against TCU, if you don't showcase that on the field at times, it's slim pickings to get on the field early in this offense.
The circle of trust, as some members of the On Texas Football family have coined it of late. CJ, I don't want to take away your thunder. Take it away with Emit Mosley, because you had a nugget this week on Emit Mosley from off-season workouts, and I think everybody that read it got fired up.
Yeah, look, very athletic, and I don't think that's a surprise to many. Of course, his mother was a All-American soccer player back in the day as well, so it's genetic for him. I've heard that there's a little bit of a springiness to his legs, a guy that can go up and get it. That's encouraging, especially when you consider what Arch Manning's strengths might be, that deep ball, that maybe some of that 50-50 returning the offense. We saw that at Stanford for Emit Mosley as well, just going up and get it at times. I think obviously Texas is going to have a better vertical passing attack than what he was in at Stanford at the time. But look, athleticism translates. And I think when you showcase the hands, when you showcase the ability to make plays as a freshman going into year 2, you take those steps in your development as well. But right now, the early returns are very positive in the sense that, hey, some folks behind the scenes a little encouraged by the take, of course, but maybe surprised in the sense of, hey, I didn't know he was that athletic early on in summer conditioning.
When we look at the freshmen, I think all of these guys are at different trajectories. I was surprised to see, and I don't know if you were, but I was surprised to look at the roster update coming out of spring ball to see that Jamie French and Khalil Lockett both up to 187 pounds.
Yes.
Dalen McCutchen probably had the best spring out of anybody in that freshman class. And then you've got maybe the biggest X factor on offense in the entire program for the foreseeable future, which is Michael Terry at 216 pounds. Is he going to be a wide receiver? Is he going to be an H-back? Is he going to be a move guy, a running back? I don't know, but we know the talent and the athleticism and the physical gifts are there for him to be a difference maker. CJ, what do you make of this freshman class? And you know what? We'll go ahead and throw the red shirts in there too, because you mentioned Parker Livingstone. We heard some really good things about him during spring ball, just in terms of his – with DeAndre Moore and Ryan Wingo both out, somebody had to get those snaps. So that was prime time for Parker Livingstone to be able to step up, take advantage of his opportunity, and show the coaches something. So whether you're talking about redshirt freshmen, and again, throw Aaron Butler in that group, or true freshmen, and Chris Jackson has a really talented, albeit a really young wide receiver group.
Yeah, again, very talented, very young, a lot of potential, however. And that's kind of the key phrase here is a lot of talent there, but yet to know exactly what you're going to get out of it. I'll start with Parker Livingstone because in the spring, if you were to tally up the touchdowns caught in 7-on-7 and 1-on-1s and team situations, it was probably Parker Livingstone by a wide margin, and then your second place guy. Of course, this was without a DeAndre Moore, without a Ryan Wingo, but Livingstone was your guy, and that was with the first team offense and with Arch Manning. He's going to be a pivotal piece of this picture going into the 2025 season. Now, going into that freshman class, it's going to be interesting because starting with Michael Terry, look, a bit of an enigma to me. I don't know what the plan is for him long-term, but he's a wide receiver for me at the moment and moving forward. I don't think that body weight will come naturally as naturally as we expected coming into his college career. Of course, to play that sniffer, that H-back, that tight end role, you'd probably like him closer to 230, 235, maybe 240. I don't know how quickly that will come for him. But I do know every day in the offseason or every day in the spring, in which the spring concludes, you get that month off in May, you move into summer conditioning. He was working in some capacity. I've heard that a couple times. I actually got to see it as well this offseason. But look, point being, that's going to be an interesting one because he's a guy, again, 6'2", 6'3", bigger body than what Texas typically takes at wide receiver. It's gonna be fun to watch. But I will say, Dalen McCutchen, if there's anybody, Jeff, that maybe took the opportunity handed to him with no DeAndre Moore and really ran with it, it was Dalen McCutchen, who really, I think, earned the trust. And this has always kind of been the big key for young wide receivers, learning the playbook. He absorbed it like a sponge, and that's a very tough thing to do for young wide receivers in this offense.
No doubt. CJ, we'll get to the recruits here in just a minute, but I want to focus a little more on Dalen McCutchen because we talk about Terry and Lockett and French, and those guys either finished the cycle as or at one point were 5-star prospects in that recruiting cycle, in the 25 recruiting cycle. Dalen McCutchen was a late add. They took him in the fall. And you kind of wondered, okay, how's he going to fit in? I had heard some of the same stuff that you had heard, like, hey, he's going to be able to pick up the playbook quickly. He's probably more just in terms of understanding football and being able to slide on the offense, maybe ahead of the other guys. And granted, kind of like Parker Livingstone, somebody had to step up and take those first team snaps in the slot with DeAndre Moore out. But I don't know if you were surprised, but even all things considered, I was surprised by almost how seamless that transition was for him going from high school to his first spring as an early enrollee, and really just, like I said, as seamless of a transition as a mid-year guy could have at the end of the day.
Oh, 100% agree. And look, I said it for a couple months now, maybe up to a year. The minute that Dalen McCutchen steps foot on campus, he would be the best route runner, just technically sound route runner that Texas would have on its roster. I still stand by that. And I think that showed up in the spring. Again, that adaptation to the offense and just being able to learn the playbook as quickly as he did really vaulted him into this category in which Sark could trust him with that first team. And for him to be getting those snaps over in Aaron Butler, for him to be in that trust as quickly as we saw in the spring, that's very encouraging for the overall outlook of his time in Austin. So I think overall Texas, and for Dalen McCutchen, I know that he might not have been the most talked about wide receiver when you talk about 5-star Michael Terry, 5-star Jamie French, 5-star Khalid Lockett. Very positive first spring for Dalen McCutchen, no doubt.
All right, I want to take a minute to thank our sponsor for this edition of On Texas Football. It's Allegiant Digital Marketing. Are you a business owner who struggles with any of the following? Finding new customers, consistent leads, finding marketing services to promote your business that actually work? Founder and CEO Chad Markham with Allegiant Digital Marketing, an Austin-based advertising agency, has helped thousands of business owners just like you for over 25 years conquer these same challenges. So if you're ready to start making money in your business and grow with confidence, visit allegiantdigital.com/ontexasfootball. That's Allegiant with an A, digital.com/ontexasfootball, and you get a free marketing plan. Plus, you can save $2,500 in advertising today with their Hook 'em Horn special. Again, that's allegiantdigital.com/ontexasfootball for your free marketing plan. And with their Hook 'em Horn special, you can save up to $2,500 in advertising today. Do not delay. Get in touch with Allegiant Digital Marketing. And we want to thank Chad Markham and Allegiant Digital for sponsoring this edition of On Texas Football. CJ, let's get to the recruiting class in 2026 in this cycle. Two massive decisions coming up in early July. Kaden Finley going to commit on July the 4th. Jalen Lott was supposed to commit on the 4th. He's since moved his. He's going to commit on July the 8th. I'll put you on the spot right now. Does Texas get one of these guys or both of these guys or neither? Which is your best bet?
They get one for sure. And right now that one to me is Kaden Finley. I know things are still up in the air with a Jalen Lott. He's actually at Oregon this weekend, being hosted by DeCorian Moore, another DFW. I know that name still stings a lot of Texas fans, but look, Evan Stewart hosted DeCorian Moore now hosting Jalen Lott. Again, Texas fans, I'm sorry for all three of those names.
We just said DeCorian Moore and July 4th, like within 10 words of each other. So I'm sure a lot of people
the flashbacks are going crazy.
The nearest receptacle to vomit in.
Point being, it's going to be a fight for Jalen Lott, maybe more so than I anticipated coming into the summer officials. I thought once he would get on campus with Texas, maybe things would move right into a decision as we expect going into July 8th in favor of the Longhorns. I don't think that's going to be the case, but look, USC is where his sister runs track. He's been out there several times. USC, look, they put out, as they have been doing this 2026 cycle, they put their best foot forward when it comes to recruiting right now, and he is the top of their board. They feel confident out west. And then Oregon has that allure, right? That kind of aura that kids are attracted to. I just mentioned two wide receiver names that are certainly enjoying their time at Oregon, I will say. But Jalen Lott's going to be interesting. I do think Texas is in a good spot for Kaden Finley. I think Texas has obviously hosted him right now for an official visit. This is one I would be surprised if Texas does not land. And I'll say this about Kaden Finley as well. This recruitment reminds me a lot of Colton Vossick's, right? Early on, hey, I want to go elsewhere. I don't want to really follow my father's footsteps. I want to kind of blaze my own path. But when it comes down to it, when you kind of come to the nitty-gritty, do I really see myself, someone that grew up wearing the burnt orange, someone watching all of these games my entire life, do I really envision myself wearing a jersey of another team going to a school that's not in Austin, Texas? I don't see that to be the case.
Yeah.
So when his decision comes on 4th of July, some of those fireworks to me, Jeff, I think will be a little burnt orange.
Yeah, Notre Dame has put up a heck of a fight.
Certainly.
Kaden Finley. But I think at the end of the day, I'm kind of with you. The way this one feels right now, it feels like it's Texas. And, you know, the Jalen Lott conversation brings me to I want to talk about Cohen Brown. And we'll talk about Cohen Brown and Chris Stewart before we're done here. But the Jalen Lott conversation brings me to the guy who I think he's probably the biggest wild card in the class, CJ. That's Germaine Bishop Jr.
Yeah.
It could be a tremendous player at Texas at corner. He might be better on offense. And for me, if I had my druthers, and I'm not Steve Sarkisian, I don't get paid that much money. If I did, I probably wouldn't be doing the show with you, but I digress. I still would. I love the show. And anyway, if I had my druthers, Germaine Bishop would have the ball in his hands as much as possible. And like, I don't even care. We'll see how, you know, the thought of Jonah Williams returning punts as a freshman is really enticing. But I think the minute Germaine Bishop Jr. steps on campus, that's your punt returner for the foreseeable future because he's a difference maker in the return game. CJ, I don't know if you like him better at corner or receiver, but he at least gives you the flexibility that if you're a receiver short and something happens with attrition or whatever, or there's just a couple corners that, hey, look, they took Grayson Littleton really late before signing day last year. If Mark Orfe or Dwayne Aquina or Kenoto Hudson finds a corner that they really like, you've got the flexibility to move Germaine Bishop to offense. I don't know which side of the ball you like him on, CJ. I just want him at some point at Texas to have the ball in his hands, or at least to get the opportunity to touch it.
Look, I was probably wrong. I was a big cornerback guy for Germaine Bishop. I thought that twitch would keep him right in the mix with just about any wide receiver that he would face opposite of him on the defensive side of the ball. I'm probably wrong there because you just laid it out there. You got to get the ball in his hands. Yeah. And I think that's where Texas envisions him playing at the next level is you got to find a way to put him in a position to make plays with the ball in his hands, get the rock to him and see what he can do. Because, look, he had the luxury of playing with DJ Lagway going into his junior year, right? The Gatorade Player of the Year, and Texas will face him at Florida this year. But what he did without DJ Lagway is just as encouraging. Right. You know, this is a guy that just put up all sorts of numbers, 1,500 yards, all sorts of touchdowns. He just makes plays. And that's something, look, I know Texas had Xavier Worthy, but you haven't seen that that mold of receiver at Texas in a pretty long time. Kind of a stringy, you know, skinny, smaller frame, but that twitch, that electricity factor is there with Germaine Bishop that you really just haven't necessarily seen a whole lot of. I think that's something that made Alabama so special when Sark was there is you had 4, 5, 6 of those type of guys. Germaine Bishop would have been an Alabama wide receiver with Steve Sarkisian, and that's a guy that would have been drafted in the first round.
There's so many two-way guys Texas has taken over the years that it probably would have worked out the same. Like the guy that immediately comes to mind is Quandre Diggs. If Quandre Diggs was an offensive player, his career probably would have worked out the same because I just think he's that good of a football player. But when I think of Germaine Bishop, I think of a time where the Texas staff, when they got Ramont Taylor, really wanted to try him out at corner. And normally I'm for it. I say, hey, he's good enough to help you win games. Just find somewhere. But similar with Ramont Taylor and Germaine Bishop Jr., I'm like, no, the upside, the electricity when they've got the ball in their hands, the ability, the kind of guy that makes you hold your breath when they touch the football, that's what Germaine Bishop is. So we'll see how it ends up working out at Texas, but they've got that luxury if they want to. CJ, real quick, Chris Stewart, who's actually on a visit this weekend, he's been committed for so long, it's almost out of sight, out of mind. No disrespect to him, but he's just been a part of the class so long, you almost forget that he's a part of the class. But still, really good player out of Shadow Creek.
It's a bit unfortunate to Chris Stewart because I think, as you just mentioned, folks kind of put him out of mind, and it, in a way, it kind of diminishes the talent that he possesses. And this is a guy in the OT7 circuit, was MVP, offensive MVP of those tournaments, a guy that Tennessee is very heavily recruiting as well. Of course, he's been committed. It feels awfully a lot like Amari Winston a year ago, in which you commit so early in the class and that picture at your position is still wide open. You kind of wonder if he's going to be a part of it long term. But look, Texas likes Chris Stewart. His father obviously was on the On Texas Football chats not too long ago saying, hey, 100% committed to the Longhorns moving forward. That's a guy I think needs a little bit more recognition. And maybe that starts with us saying that this is a heck of a talent. Probably needs some more love going his direction. And Texas certainly looking to hold on to him moving forward in this class to be a part and sign of this 2026 class.
I want to wrap this up talking about Cohen Brown, who on one of our Wednesday live streams, he joined us and Rod Babers on that Wednesday live stream. Great chat, phenomenal. I think everybody that watched it loved it. I think a kid Texas fans are really, really going to like as they continue to get to know him. If you're looking for a comparison, CJ, he does remind me a little bit of DeAndre Moore, and DeAndre Moore reminded me a lot of one of Vince Young's favorite targets back in the day, Billy Pittman. Just in terms of you can tell me what they run, and it doesn't really matter to me because when you put the film on, their play strength might be the most impressive part of their game, followed shortly thereafter by their long speed. And the thing I like about Cohen Brown, at the high school level, you're not going to arm tackle him. He'll blow through arm tackles. You got to get square up on him and wrap him up to get him down. The problem is at the high school level, that's easier said than done. And CJ, we've seen DeAndre Moore do that at the college level. I think he can come in, and I know he's got the ability to play outside or in the slot. I think he could be a guy that comes in and the staff, kind of like what they did with DeAndre Moore following Jordan Whittington. If DeAndre Moore were to come back for a senior year, I could see them telling Cohen Brown, look, you follow DeAndre Moore everywhere he goes, everything he does, how he prepares. You follow it because next year you're going to be that guy.
Yeah, you got to trust it. Will that be the case? We'll have to wait and see, Jeff. But I like where your head's at. It's interesting you use DeAndre Moore because I think mentally they're the same guy. DeAndre Moore, we've talked about being the first guy out to spring practice, the first guy out to fall camp, a guy that gets there early, stays late, first on, last to leave kind of guy. Cohen Brown, very much the same. I've heard from coaches over at Waxahachie that they've had to tell him, hey, go home. Stop working out as hard as you are. Like you're going to, basically burn yourself out. And it's probably fair, but it's encouraging to hear that work ethic is already kind of embedded in his brain at the moment. You mentioned DeAndre Moore. I'll mention Matthew Golden because, look, the measurables 6 foot, 190, about the same, 10.69 speed for Cohen Brown. That lines up kind of with what Matthew Golden ran in high school. I know that his track numbers are kind of iffy at the time, but we obviously know the 4.29 and the 40-yard dash at the combine, there's nothing that beats that, essentially. Point being, that's what got Texas into this race, is pitching him that Matthew Golden role. Play anywhere, play in the slot, play outside, we'll move you around, use your routes, use that work ethic to beat opponents, and we'll get you the rock. As a result, that was a big selling point from Steve Sarkisian, Chris Jackson, the whole staff to get him into the fold. But that work ethic, as you mentioned, it mirrors almost exactly of DeAndre Moore. And if those are the two guys that you're drawing comparisons to, got a bright future.
Here's my ultimate take on Cohen Brown. Forget wherever he's ranked and rated and
Correct.
however that plays out throughout the process. The staff the staff he's committed to now, Steve Sarkisian and Chris Jackson, they know how to evaluate and develop wide receivers and get them ready for the NFL. They know what they're doing. The staff he was previously committed to, Lincoln Riley and USC, an offensive-minded coach who knows how to look at receivers, knows how to develop receivers, and get them ready for the NFL. When two of the most prolific offensive coaches in the country decide they want you and you play wide receiver, sign me up.
Correct. And I think that's what Texas fans should be understanding maybe a little bit more than they are. Cohen Brown, that rating, I know, Jeff, I don't want to go into conspiracies here, but the BOMC, the Burn Orange Media conspiracy theory, look, that Cohen Brown's going to see a ratings boost, and I think that's well-deserved.
No doubt. All right, CJ, thank you for the knowledge and expertise as always. We'll see how the wide receiver position plays out for the Longhorns with some big July announcements, and then camp should be really fun to watch this young group again grow together with Arch Manning over what we expect to be Arch's 2 years in the saddle for the Longhorns. Thank you, CJ. Big thank you to Matthew behind the scenes for producing it. Thank you to the entire On Texas Football staff. Thank you to Chad Markham and Allegiant Digital Marketing for sponsoring this edition of On Texas Football. Speaking of On Texas Football, if you're not a member at ontexasfootball.com, get over to the site right now. Sign up using the promo code OTFOG. That'll get you 1 year of access for $39.95. You don't want to miss anything. Look, we're done with the visit weekends in June after this weekend, but you've got those July decisions, a lot of decisions coming up actually this next week. Before you know it, we'll be at SEC Media Days, we'll be at camp, we'll be at the high school football season, so a lot of stuff happening. You don't want to miss any of it over at ontexasfootball.com. So again, the promo code OTFOG, that'll get you 1 year of access for $39.95. For CJ Vogel, I'm Jeff Howe. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and until next time, hook 'em.